Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I do these things, Seth, is because when it's in editing and I'm the one who's doing the editing because we turn them around so quickly, I can see by scrubbing fast when we are ready to go. So that's how I'm able
I
to get
thought
the
it was the
podcast
hook.
turned around
I
so
thought you're
quickly.
going with the hook. I got Dennis Yu in the office this week, and he's constantly the videos. They got to have a hook to bring him in. The
Gotta
top
have a
three
hook.
things that'll keep oxygen flowing to you so you don't die.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So I want to check in with you, of course, everybody. That guy over there, Seth Price from Blue Shark Digital, as well as managing partner of Price Benowitz. I'm Jay Ruane. I'm from the Criminal Mastermind, and of course, we both run our wonderful law firm Blueprint Facebook group with over 2,000 law firm owners trying to scale their firms and do better every single day. And so, Seth, I wanted to chat with you this week and check in. How's your week going? You've been traveling a little.
Traveling a little, travel to come. It's a crazy fall. We got a bunch of cool stuff going on. This week is TLU as well as Great Legal Marketing, which to me would be sort of like the great sort of full circle. 15 years ago, sat in the back row of a Great Legal Marketing and met a couple, legendary people, Ed Lake and Emery Ledger. I really went a different path and didn't sort of join that herd, but have been invited back to speak this year, for the first time, which is kind of a great honor to come full circle, or place you sort of started out as a place where you're now presenting. And had the other thing that happened this week is Dennis Yu, sort of a big name in the SEO and now the video social space, came by, and he's been on my the SEO Insider podcast of late, but he spent a day with the team at Blue Shark, which is awesome.
Oh, nice.
It's just the mind that he has and what he's seen and what he sees in the future. Just a great person to have the team leverage and bounce ideas off of and continue to sort of push forward and innovate together.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we should even talk about a little bit about. We have a lot of great people in our audience, but one of the things that you always want to do when you have the opportunity is really critically evaluate who you're going to see speak, who you're going to go and invest your time with, because really you kind of want to be the dumbest person in the room, right? You don't want to be the person that has the ideas. You want to get knowledge and get inspired by other people, and so the more opportunities you have, the better. One of the ones talking about just inspiration and that type of thing, a friend of the show, Melissa Shanahan, is launching something new. You had some information about
Yeah,
that.
no, just exactly. It's a business mastery program. A lot of coaching groups out there. Big fan of hers. She's done some great stuff. Excited to see what she does, bringing people together quarterly, virtually, with coaching in between. Look, I know you're starting to do some work with Knock Hazel as we do,
Yep.
on the with Fireproof. I'm a big fan of just anything that gets people rowing in the same direction.
Sure.
And there's no one size fits all. And to a certain extent, and Knock Hazel will tell you this, like a plan that is poorly executed better than no plan at all. And so the idea, and I'm not getting his words exactly right, but the idea that finding whatever fits your ethos, but making sure you do something and continue. And for a guy who sort of didn't do as much coaching, have Bill Biggs working on operations, working with Fireproof on our EOS-esque implementation. They do their own twist on it for law firms, but there's no magic. And my feeling is, find something you like at a price point you feel comfortable with, and run, because every time I sort of am cynical about it, I take one of these different programs and I see actionable takeaways, and my team, for example, taking our head of operations and moving her closer to a COO, something that she may not have come in with naturally or with that training, but using these different programs to up level your team. Again, there's always the concern that somebody's going to leave, but what do they say? Train them, they may leave, but the worst thing is, don't train them, they may stay.
Yeah, and it's one of these things that there are, compared to when you and I were starting out, when there really was like you and me in the back of a room saying, have you thought about this idea? Have you thought about that idea? And literally just sort of like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. There are a lot of opportunities now for entrepreneurial lawyers. There's podcasts, obviously, like ours. There's groups like ours. There are conferences. There are, you know, I mean, like NTL's got their business of law coming up. There's a lot more focused on, hey, running the practice of law as a business. And it almost is like, you know, people out there could be drinking from a fire hose. I mean, you and I both know there are people who literally will go to everything. And I think that that might not necessarily be the best thing, because you get a little analysis paralysis, right? Like
Absolutely.
every time you're at a conference, you got a new idea, you come back with a book full of them, but then 2 weeks later you're at something else and you're not really doing anything. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because, you know, often I get phone calls from people, or messages saying, hey, you know, things aren't great. What can I do? I've done X, Y, and Z. I'm looking to start back at the alphabet. Give me A. I need to do something else to make the phone ring. And I've really found that a lot of people don't necessarily give it time to let things actually grow the way they should. I'm sure you found that in the SEO space, where people are looking for results in month 2, and it's tough to get organic results that quickly. You know,
But it's not
there's
right with all of this. And again, you've heard me say this before, right? To me, a great conference. And as I started, my head would hurt because I had so much to do, where you would basically take a notepad, you take notes, because I think you learn through that, and then you star the things you think are important. And I'm a big believer, flight home, don't do it you're going to get, when you get home, it's too busy. You go and you basically make notes and you prioritize 1 through 10, and knowing you can't get to short term more than 3 things.
Right.
It won't happen. I literally went through this. We had Dennis Yu at the office. We have 10 great ideas from him. I will similarly take 3 right away, 4 medium term, and 3 are good ideas, but we can't do them right away.
Right.
And I'll say something, that not all speeches or talks at conferences are created equal. I mean, you've known me for a while. I'm a big believer, even if I have Blue Shark as an item or referrals to Price Benno, it's the way you make connections is adding value. Like on the show, right? If we teach and people like it, I don't know. I know my referrals are up since I've done the show. I know that the people that call me out of the blue for blue, we're not ever saying you should send a case here, but you're just building trust and adding value. Dennis was saying this, give away all the ideas you have in the world, because 98% of people will never do it. That's certainly true with digital marketing, right? So, meaning, so thank God, and that's why we have a business. But I'll tell you something, that I had a life moment conference-wise, because you know that I go to as many conferences as anybody, and I went to one that was not part of our normal world. One of the coaches that I got was from outside of the legal space to help David Brenton at Blue Shark, and it's the CEO Coaching International. And this is sort of like if you know what YPO is, this is sort of like a high-level coaching for very successful entrepreneurs, 8, 9 figures, with some people having, 10-figure exits. It's that type of a group. And they brought in Belford, the Wolf of Wall Street, who's done the circuit, right? I don't know if you've been to conferences that he's spoken at, et cetera. And one of the things that we identify that have seen is he has a great story, right? The movie's entertaining. He's a great salesman. Yeah. And he gave a keynote, which was fine. I didn't learn anything. I sat through it, which is rare for me, but that isn't where I got value, right? Because that's inspirational. And if you need inspiration, go, but that's where you're saying, don't keep going to conferences for inspiration, because that's not going to make you money, right? So I went to a breakout session. They had breakouts afterwards where he's in a small room, overfilling with people on the walls. And he went into detail where he broke down his selling techniques, not the story that made him famous, but the idea of like
persuasion method is awesome.
Right.
It's a really, really good sales technique.
And again, he spent an hour and a half, 45 minutes more than the time allotted. You could hear a pin drop in the room. Standing, when I say standing, there were 20 of us standing in the back of this tiny room. It was, and again, it's out there in other forms. But when I got that, it was just amazing. Talking about, what level of certainty are people at, getting them from 1 to 10. And then secondarily, how do they view you or the salesperson? And then third, how do they perceive your business? And each of those have to align, and talking about moving it up. I mean, this guy, as he said in his keynote, it could be used for good or evil. But when you start dissecting the way he did, looking at sales that way, I thought was just brilliant and gave me, even for a guy who goes to all these all the times, it took the back room, which sometimes you get with the speaker after they speak. But when you can get away from the stump speech and you can get to that sort of extra value, to me, that was just incredible. I'm happy to put in the comments a link to a YouTube that he has that has much of what he discussed there, because I found it incredibly valuable.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Okay, so that leads me to my next question. And this is something that you and I actually have a little personal disagreement on. We've gone back and forth. You've told me I'm crazy for doing what I'm doing, but I think it's something that we should discuss. And I'm just going to lay it out there. I'm a big believer in building your brand, building it on social, building it locally, building it in, and investing in building your brand. And it's my understanding how you think that is necessarily incorrect, that you should take that same money and time and put it into things like digital marketing to capture the hot leads, versus me saying, no, there's also a branding component that you need to have. So am I encapsulating your
well,
position?
yes. No, look, we could have our normal, like, you're wrong, I'm right. Look, I'll start off with, I don't think it's step one. I do as a 43 lawyer firm, some branding. Yes. Do I go to conferences where it's brand? And are there things you can do with it? Yes. But for many people, take your criminal cadre from the mastermind, that brand only gets you so far. And if you have limited resources, you may never get over the hump of recognition that will get you the cases. Now, if you're branding within a legal community that's smaller, fine, because, let's say you go, family lawyers have the need for criminal people, and I know that, so I'm going to brand to those people and put myself out there. But I would argue that for many people listening to the show who have a B2C area with a non-replicable need, where it's not like you're going after financial advisors, but you need somebody who needs a will, you need somebody who might get arrested or divorced. People are not going to retain that information with the spend that the average person here will put on it. And that if you don't get to the point where a brand exists, and there are people, Morgan has it, there are people in upstate New York, Salino has it in New York, where you get to the point where you've created a brand, those guys are spending tens of millions of dollars, sure, right, on brand. But if you don't overcome that hump, to me, that is money that is going down and may not, and likely will not show you ROI in the short or medium term. And that if you need to keep the lights on and you want to build and grow, particularly in a criminal defense world, use that as an example, but I think it could be used for PI or family, that those dollars can get actual cases that will build your firm and bring good follow-on clients and all sorts of positive attributes, that if you pump the money into brand, you may have nothing to show for at the end of the day, where if spent well, that actual search will make you a higher ROI in the short and medium term. Long term, you could build brand, but that takes a lot to get over and is generally early stage, I think, a fool's errand, in that you're not going to be able to get there fast enough to be able to build and grow your firm.
See, now, and here's where I can appreciate your sentiment, but I think you're wrong. Okay? And here's why. Adidas had a brand with Kanye West, and they just cut ties with him. Now they are going to continue to build their brand. They're taking a little bit of a hit. But you and I know that we are not talking about scale for the most part among people in our audience and most lawyers in general that rises to that level, right? And they don't even necessarily rise to the level of Price Benowitz with 40 plus lawyers. Majority of people in our audience are local lawyers who have a niche practice, most likely in a small to mid-sized community. And I think if you are investing a little bit of money, now I'm not talking hundreds of thousands a year, I'm not even talking tens of thousands a year, I'm talking maybe a couple thousand a year in targeting locally.
That's different, but that's different. Are you talking a couple thousand a year or a couple thousand a month? $200 a month, who cares?
No, I'm saying,
no, but I'm pushing you on this. Like, you love, I'm sorry?
1,000 a month. I'm not saying big money. but I'm saying $1,000 a month between YouTube ads, between social media sponsored posts in a defined geographic area to establish your bona fides with the greater audience in your 30-mile radius or 50-mile radius. That's going to provide just another point. And some of this stuff doesn't even cost money. It just goes, it means being out, being seen, that type of thing.
If you're going to do social and you love it, and that's one of the things, if they love it, great, because you can do amazing stuff we talked about, Dennis Hewitt and others, where you can own an area and there's techniques that are being talked about where you could become part of that community, fine. But for the average person, if it's just straight media spend and it's $1,000 a month, look, I do it, so I can't say not to do it. I don't want to be a hypocrite, but I feel like for the average person, if you're a family lawyer and $1,000 gets you 5 viable leads that you could close 2 or in a good month 3, that's going to do you a lot more. You always talk about where do you spend the next 1,000, and I think you're spending a lot of money before you get to brand for the average startup law firm. And the people watching us, it's a whole mix. There are people in major markets where they need to find a tiny little community. Again, if you say I'm going to brand in the B2B space different, where I'm going to own financial trust and estates, I'm going to brand and get those things, and I'm going to target financial advisors because those are my fine. But if you're just doing general brand out there and you're doing criminal, I don't get it, because people aren't going to retain it when they need it. They're going back to search. Maybe somebody once will see it, but I just think that you're not going to get ROI. And then if you ask me, somebody comes to you and they're spending, let's say, already $3,000 a month, whether it be on SEO or PPC, and they have an extra $1,000. I don't think they're ready for brand, that you're not going to get that ROI. You're better off with direct LSAs.
But Seth, I'm not talking about a widget that we're selling that next week or next year is going to get knocked off by some company out of China. Lawyers themselves have a 40+ year career, and establishing your brand early, letting people know what you stand for, is going to help you land cases in 20 years too. You've got to stand for something.
Look, so many, if you go statistically, the people watching this 10 years ago, do they have the same brand? Do they merge with somebody else? Do they switch from person to, type of law person? Will it hurt you? It won't hurt you, but is it where the next dollars are spent? I think that there's when you get over to a certain point, brand wins. I get it. But until you get there, that your first dollars, you can spend a lot of money sort of pissing in the snow.
I'm not advocating for people to start running TV commercials.
Understood, but the first $1,000. So to me, I'm going to push back on you and say, hey, there may be a time and place for it, but what level of paid search and or SEO and or whatever else you're doing? Just like if somebody comes to me and says, I'm in a B2B law space. You've heard me say this before. First thing I say is don't do SEO unless you're doing everything else you should be doing.
Right.
Are you going to a dinner? Do you have a eating club? Do you have season tickets? Are you holding a breakfast for people in your space? Do you have all those things? Okay, great. I have a 5-lawyer firm. I'm doing all those things. Now let me SEO into the industry. Great. But to me, there's an order of operations, and that brand is not an immediate thing. You can waste a lot of valuable resources early that could build your firm with proof of concept, happy clients that will send people back. That brand comes and goes and isn't remembered meaningfully unless you get over that branding hump where you're spent enough to have multiple touch points.
Maybe we're defining brand differently. And that may be because I don't necessarily think of brand as just your logo hammering people over and over. Part of my brand as my firm involves the care and customer service that we have. Part of the brand of my firm includes our knowledge in the area of DUI defense and domestic violence defense, which is what we're known for. And so by going out, spending time speaking, letting people know I exist, answering questions for lawyers, all of that to me is building brand. Right. And so maybe I invest that $1,000 this month in in having my slide deck professionally produced and go up and teach a bunch of lawyers in a CLE.
Absolutely, but listen, that's a bunch of lawyers. That's different. That's not brand. That's B2B marketing. I'm all for that.
Oh no, I disagree. I disagree.
But
That is part of your brand.
But you're not holding time. Are you
Personal
doing a
brand.
slide? Are you going to a slide deck to like a random like a random thing? Or are you going to targeted stuff?
No, I'm going to targeted things, and I'm
Right, but that's not brand. I mean, it's brand, but it's a subset of brand, and that's what I'm saying. If you ran your ads to the legal community, I get that as a referral piece. But if you're saying I'm going to put media against the general population where they're looking at ads for everything else,
yeah, I'm not talking. I mean, there are, one of the wonderful things about digital marketing now is that you can actually target the people that are more likely to need you based on your consumer list. You go in,
but that's the hard part about criminal. That's why, to me, when I see young lawyer, I'm doing criminal, should I do BNI? I'd say no.
Oh no, I would say no, absolutely, because those are business owners. They don't need.
But it's brand. To follow to the Jay Ruane, it's brand. They might need you at some point. They do, but it's not enough of a use of your time to do that you're better off. You know, nothing. If you did BNI every week for a year, you'd get a couple cases. It's just not a good ROI in your time, in my opinion. Whereas the Jay Ruane model, where you went and did stuff against the grain, where you went to the bar association or whatever general meeting of lawyers are, and you said, I'm the DUI guy, I get it. That's genius. But putting pre-rolls on to the general population that's not to lawyers, I don't get it fully at an early stage. There's a place for it, but with a nominal budget and with a choice, because we always talk about on the show, where do I spend my next 1,000? I don't think that the early stage firms are spending their next 1,000 on brand, and that you could piss away valuable resources without any cases. I'm case in point. I spend like up to 3,000 a month on brand, on pre-roll and all that stuff. I don't see direct ROI. It's very hard to get ROI, period. Again, maybe I can't track it. Maybe it's one of the 17 points somebody has before they get to my firm. So I'm doing it. But that stuff that I do once I get to a significant budget, I was very, very focused on paid search, organic search, making sure for the transactional things like criminal, like family, that we're there at that moment. Over a career, absolutely. But short term, I think that where you sit now is different than much of our audience.
Well, I just think that, if you're going to, I think there should always be some attention paid to your brand in the market and how you can position yourself to be the one that people think of when they address the issue that you solve. And that's really what I talk about when I mean branding. I want other lawyers. I want other business people. I want people thinking Jay Ruane equals DUI.
Right. And I'd say that at the point you're at, you can do that. You have multiple lawyers, but for the average person with 1, 2, even 3.
Yeah, but I was that one guy, Seth.
Understood.
And I was doing it too. I was getting out there. I was giving.
But the first, you were getting out there with sweat equity. If you had money to spend, you were doing PPC because it worked really well then, right? Early days, $1,000 was a lot of freaking cases.
My first pay-per-click cost for a signed case, I shit you not, was 2 cents. I got a case for 2 cents. Could you imagine if you could get a case in today's
by your own
market?
Name for 2 cents? I just look to show that, like, we had a situation. Somebody gave us a new technique for retargeting that I'm testing. I always use my own firm as a test. I wake up, there's some absurd amount of money spent on retargeting. And I was like, and I'm getting oh no, don't worry, Google crawls it back because apparently they you give them a budget and Google likes to blow it away. My point is, it's a constant, figuring out different angles of how do you get it, but it's no longer 2 cents. I'm spending more than that on our own brand. I know lawyers, TV advertisers that are spending 5 figures plus monthly just protecting their brand. A final point, which not to pivot off, but something that comes up that if we want to sort of end this, you could love to hear your final thoughts on it. But something that came up the other day was people buying other people's brand names for PPC. Something I've never advocated. I think it's kind of nonsense. I'm sure it makes a buck, but something to come up just for the audience to be aware before you get too excited, because you're going to see other people coming up for your name in pay-per-click. One of the things to be careful about is before you get too excited, a nice note to them, just asking them to make you a negative keyword goes a long way, because Google has gotten to the point now where, yes, some people are evil and they're buying your name, Most people are not. It's that when you do pay-per-click, whether it be for your firm or whether you're doing it for your law firm blueprint, whatever, if they see somebody else searching for something that is in your world, then they will show that ad. So for example, if I'm making this up, but let's say somebody was searching for crisp and you had budget for the law firm blueprint and the person's a criminal lawyer, they're going to show your ad knowing there's a chance that Google can make a buck. That's why they're so rich. And so before you get too excited that somebody is actually infringing on your IP, we got a crazy person yelling at us the other day. There's a better than even chance. I pay 80% likely it's Google that's your problem, not the person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Google's nefarious when it comes to stuff like that. You know, they introduced their session-based retargeting. So I could be searching for a plumber. And if, 3 hours ago, I searched for a lawyer, when I look for a plumber, they could serve me ads. And what's frightening to me is that, so maybe somebody is searching for a plumber or doing a session-based retargeting session, and they're not searching for a lawyer, but they click on my ad because it looks interesting. Who's this lawyer? They click, and now I just paid $175, not 2 cents, for that click because somebody stayed in my site for a little while. They count that as a valid click-through. I'm not getting refunded, but I've just paid for somebody to just learn what they wanted to learn about the DUI process or the criminal law process. So, Google has really pushed the envelope as to what the right thing to do is, I guess, in some of these situations. So it's definitely something that you got to look out for.
Right. So, and just to conclude, I'm not anti-brand. I just feel like you have to be careful that when you're starting out, that you're not going to get to a point, not that you shouldn't be aspiring to be Jay Ruane and known by everybody in that, but if you're to do it, I think you're going to get much better ROI in a B2B, which is why when you look at any marketing group, there are a lot of them. Stephen Fairley over the years was like so good at early paid Facebook that it worked for him because he had a fishbowl of potential customers. If you look at it like you have a fishbowl of B2B referral sources, great. I just think when you move into the B2C world, it is easy to justify it with brand, but not to piss away a lot of money and then not be able to justify the ROI on it.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think you should be spending a ton of money on it, but I definitely think it should be part of your conversation and things that you're thinking of. And branding goes so far as, making sure that you have color consistency across your website and your promotional materials, a sharp logo, all of those things. It's not just one thing or the other, and making sure that you're updating your GMB or GBP.
No, look, that's my bread and butter. I'm just saying the idea of media against B2C brand is a very tumultuous world that should not be like, there should be 3 points before, you think it's a great idea because you listen to Jay, you sleep on it. You then, you sort of think about what could I do with that same money? Next question Jay would ask, is it better to do it on this or that? And the moment you sort of get to the point where you've slept on it, you've said, hey, that $1,000 could buy me X, Y, or Z in different areas, and I'm still good with it, fine. But to me, that's the issue is, every time you spend money, are you evaluating what the other options for that are?
Awesome. All right, Seth, that's going to do it today for here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Thank you all so much for being with us. And we'd love to have you as a member of our group. If you are not one yet, please join us in the Law Firm Facebook Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group. That's a mouthful right there. And of course, you can always catch us live every Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, right here live on Facebook, as well as in a number of different groups that are out there. And then if you want to take us on the go, wherever podcasts are available, Google, Apple, Spotify, wherever, just search up the Law Firm Blueprint. Make sure you give us a follow so that every time we drop a new episode, you are notified and it is ready to go. You got something to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was walking to a conference, got out at the valet, and this guy says, can't talk to you now, I'm listening to you. It was a great experience.
That's awesome. It's funny. I don't go to conferences really anymore. I'm sticking close to home. And although I don't know, I may be joining you in Miami at the end of January. We shall see. I'm looking forward to those days when people say that they're listening to me as I bump elbows and shoulders in hallways of conferences. You're just always at a conference.
Right. Well, I was going to say, anybody who's had anything better to do, go do that now. I'm just going to talk to Jay. The Yanks, I'm devastated. It's just crazy.
So let me ask you, do you think they have it in them to actually make a run, or are they, do
No.
we have to get rid of Aaron Boone?
Well, I mean, look, that's another question. Like firing manager is always symbolic, but we don't have the pitching. And if you don't have the pitching, you can't, as you see, and the Yanks have done this since, let's call it the core four era, that as you get, we don't have Mariano, we don't have middle inning relief. No, not that anybody has Mariano, but the idea that you're relying upon sluggers and two in the outfield, right? And look, this is not an average slugger. This is a once in a generation slugger, but it demonstrates that pitching beats hitting. When you get to the elite point where there are, two teams left, right? You have to get through the Astros, you got to get through the Phillies. We know it's the Phillies, but an elite team that, yes, there are times when hitting matters, and Phillies saw that, but you got to be in it to win it. And they were just not even close. Like, this wasn't like, you didn't say, oh my God, I can't believe they got swept. You're like, that's about right. This wasn't a devastated, they barely got through Cleveland in some respects. And and the worst part was their defense didn't help them.
Well, so, I mean, they had, and I mean, in reality, Cleveland almost found a way to win by playing small ball.
Exactly.
Right? Dink dunk hits, that type of thing. I mean, if you look back to when the Yankees had their last big run, you had Cone, Pettit, Wells, you had Stanton for long relief. You had, at first you had Wetland, you had Mariano, then Wetland, and just Mariano, which was, the best of all time. Right. We are missing that long middle reliever. We're missing that third starter. We're missing a closer that's a lights out closer. I mean, you can't bank on home run hitting.
It doesn't work. No, year after year. A-Rod, how many times, except for once, did it just shut down? And it's not like he's but for Roy's, he's a Hall of Fame guy, right? It's like Hall of Fame doesn't beat great pitching. What do you do at best? At best, you're going to be a 333 guy. That's one, And you got,
I like some of the new kids that are coming up. I like
absolutely.
Dater. I think Dater's going to be great. I hope they re-sign Judge and make him the captain. I'm a big proponent that he at 30 is worth, $300 million for 10 years.
It's also look, the Dodgers keep ponying up. You're going to let him go there. Like, think about it. With what they're charging and what you're paying for seats next season, they can that's not a crazy number for them.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, they'll sell 300 million worth of jerseys in the
exactly. And you said it before. I couldn't agree with you more. We disagree a lot. Like that alone on a branding play to let him go. Like, what's your? He is the focus of the team,
right?
And look, I see it like being a Caps fan watching Ovechkin here, right? Regular season hockey, they've had one championship, but they've been good for a lot of years. They sell out every game. Those key players make a huge difference. And what kills me when you're looking at the Yanks is that, like, I just don't see it changing anytime soon. One thing that nobody's talking about is we lost Father Steinbrenner, and
right.
we have somebody else, and there is a certain business owner imperative of winning that doesn't seem to be there, and it sucks. I feel like when you look at the number of years since a last championship, we're looking at the CBS years, the Horace Clarke years. And it's tough to stomach.
It is. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for being with us. We will commiserate over another long off season, cold weather for the Yankees, but we'll be back in the spring. But in the meantime, check us out next Thursday when we'll be talking all about legal marketing, scaling your business, running it with systems, and maybe some more baseball too.
Oh, remember, Giants and Jets. You haven't had this good.
Hey, I'm going with Ryan McKean on Sunday to see the Jets versus Pats. And I think the Jets are going to win. I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be a fun time.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, folks. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week here live on the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.